Memphis Depay, Virgil van Dijk, Michael van Gerwen, Max Verstappen. It just fits. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. I was very quickly running out of Dutch elite sporting athletes there as the list came down. I was like, you just about got there. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 321 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friend and neighbor host, Trey Harrison. Hope you guys are doing alright. In this episode, we'll be talking all about the Dutch Grand Prix and the least surprising silly season you could ever possibly imagine in the next 45 minutes or so. But with me, as always, first up, representing the orange, very nicely, on brand of the t-shirt, King. Good to see you. How's it going?
It's going well, and just for balance, Annemiek van Vleuten, Marianne Vos.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the female Dutch athletes.
No, that's a very valid point. That's my bad.
Let's not forget either. We got some great baseball players from the Netherlands too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Oh yeah,
that's a good point. That's a good point as well. RJ, good to see you, man. How's it going?
It's going. It's going.
Oh, no.
What a weekend. What a weekend. I hope it was worth the wait for everybody. I hope this Dutch Grand Prix gave us a valuable lesson in the importance of being able to get to anywhere you need to go by way of walking, biking, taking a train. You don't need a car. You don't need a car as much as you need to, unless you do.
As a guy that's lived in London for his entire life with one of the best public transport systems in the world, I completely agree. Don't need cars. Terrible.
Car bad, train good.
Train good. We say on a carbureted podcast. Anyway, Cam Buckley, good to see you down there. How's it going?
You see, what's just happened here is that Top Gear bit where all we ended up proving is that the car is a pointless endeavor. Trains are still the future.
It's like you won in a bicycle. You finished second in a boat, and it's just like, oh, it's just like, yeah. That was it.
For anybody who was wondering, we did talk about this before the show. King did not go to Atlanta for a basket of lemon pepper wings without seeing family. And nothing else.
Yeah.
Totally.
Lemon. We cannot call him Lemon Pepper King.
No, damn it! I was so looking forward to that. I think we mentioned it in the pre-show that I think King was going for cinnamon pepper wings, but then he ran away when he found that they cost $60 a portion. It's like, this is
that's in certain establishments that are only populated after night.
By basketball players, yeah.
Oh.
So, Dre, what are we talking about today on this fine divisible by 3 Doing It for Dale podcast?
It's a good number, isn't it? Like I said, Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort, first Dutch Grand Prix in over 30 years, and some Dutch-Belgian guy won it. I'm not sure if it was obvious enough, given we were coated in a sea of orange smoke. By the time we got to the penultimate lap, due to the celebrations and whatnot. We'll be talking all about that. We'll be talking how it ended up being 2-1 for Max at Zandvoort and still coming out on top. The teams on both situations. And I want to talk about how the crowd themselves reacted, because that is always one that will get people talking on the interwebs. Good for the old SEO. So we'll be talking about that as well. We'll also be going into silly season and, it all went down on Monday. The last 3 days has been it's like silly season in a sense. We had Valtteri Bottas confirmed at Alfa Romeo on Monday. On Tuesday, we had George Russell confirmed at Mercedes, and then today, as we record this on September 8th, Alex Albon confirmed at Williams alongside Nicholas Latifi.
Alexander Albon is Alexander all back.
Yes, Albon, Albak. We like to hear that. And, I really should have started singing that to the infamous Craig David song, but I missed an opportunity on that one. All of that will be talked about as well in the next 45 minutes or so. But in the meantime, there are some places you can find us. We are on youtube.com/motorsport101 if you're watching us on there. Hi! Hit the like bell, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, bell, all of that good stuff. Get notifications when our new content goes up. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to follow our personal handles, you can on the screen now. If you're listening audio-wise, they're at Harrison101HD, at RJ O'Connell, at CBuckley917, and at Ryan Eric King. You can check us out on our website, motorsport101.com. I've been pretty busy over there writing-wise, personally. The blog section's got 2 new written articles up in the last couple of days. One talking about the aforementioned George Russell move to Mercedes, and just the changing tide of Formula One and the grid, the makeup, young drivers, etc. And another controversial one that came up on 2 wheels this past weekend. Not quite enough time to get it into this week's episode, but if you've been watching World Superbikes, my God, a track limits warning heard around the world as a race result was reversed, and all of a sudden, everybody hates Jonathan Ray now. So that was fun. I wrote about that as well. I compared it to an old school cricketing rule called the man can. If you're a cricket fan, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about on that one. Jonathan Ray versus the Spirit of the Rules.
Since when did Kawasaki get bought out by petty enterprises?
Well, since they started repainting the part of Magny called green, apparently it causes problems. Who'd have thunk it? So
I think that's just brand synergy.
Yeah, I wrote a piece about that. Jonathan Ray versus the Spirit of the Rules on the website section, motorsport101.com. Check the blog tier for that. So if you want to check that out as well.
We're ourselves and we haven't been following Superbikes as hard as we should be this week. It's good. Jonathan Ray's got real competition.
We've had a fight, and unlike when Bautista was challenging for the title, he hasn't crashed as many times as he won in a row.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge not from the cellar, not even from the middle shelf. Folks, this challenge is from the top rack.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Yeah, there is currently 6 points between Jonathan Ray and Toprak Razgatlioglu in that championship, so do check it out if you haven't already. So all that on the website, as well as our Patreon page, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our audio episodes. You can upgrade to 10 for the video version, and you get access to the support company like Discord server where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. So, without further ado, let's get into the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. It was always going to be an intense first Grand Prix at home for Max at Zandvoort, but he took everything thrown at him to take the win in front of a sea of 60,000 orange-laden Dutch fans. If you could see them amongst all the smoking flares, of course. He narrowly qualified on pole ahead of Lewis Hamilton, despite DRS issues, and took control early on with an exceptional opening lap, gaining a 1.9 second lead by the time he saw the control line again. Merckx had 2 chances to take the lead, but botched a slow verse stop for Lewis, followed by not taking the chance for a second undercut attempt when the long-running Bottas was briefly keeping Max behind him. Hamilton tried to make gains through the traffic, but Verstappen managed his race perfectly to take his 17th career win, the most of any F1 non-champion ever. I think he just passed Sterling Moss on that count with win number 17, which is ridiculous to even think about. His teammate Sergio Perez started from pit lane after a poor qualifying session and a replaced battery, and would go on to finish in 8th. So, gentlemen... First, you've got to go from the top. Max Verstappen having both Mercedes as genuine viable threats in this race. Something we haven't actually said very much this season in general. Hi, Valtteri. Nice of you to join us. But was this another missed opportunity for Merckx, or was Max just that good?
I tend to lean towards the latter. I mean... Pole by, I think, 38, by a little under 0.04 of a second, despite DRS problems on his final lap. It opened, but not all the way. Ooh. That opening lap. He hit the Vettel 2013 button on his steering wheel. He had a second lead out of, turn 3.
That's the thing about Zandvoort. We'll get into a second because, like, overtaking is at a super premium. They marked up the price of these overtakes around here. Once he got ahead, the only way he was going to end up losing this race is if Valtteri Bottas did get back to... And to his credit, Bottas did back Max Verstappen up a little bit into Lewis Hamilton, but there just wasn't enough of a difference in pace for Hamilton.
It didn't matter. But by the time they tried to do the pincer movement on Max, Bottas's tires were so spent that it just didn't matter. Max got by him, and within a lap, Lewis was out of DRS again.
Yeah, it didn't help that Bottas lost time after the stop as well, getting out of the way of a Sebastian Vettel spin of all things. It was just not Bottas's day after a really strong first 30 laps from the guy, actually. He had that was probably the best Bottas has looked all season in the first 30 laps or so of that race, trying the one stopper, and it just didn't, the timing just didn't quite work out. And I think, in my humble opinion, I think Merckx kept Valtteri out one lap too long. I think the extra lap was what really brought Max into play, and then that's what forced the overtake. And I'm not sure it would have mattered in the end, but it certainly didn't help. If they could find a way to get Lewis out in front, then maybe forcing Verstappen to maybe go for a pass on track would have been the way to go. The undercut was definitely worth 2 to 3 seconds around here. There was absolutely a chance of an overcut, but then Hamilton's first stop was 3.6 seconds, and then, Max's was 2.4, and then that pretty much killed any chance of Lewis coming out in front after the first stop, and that was the end of it, really. They tried,
that was the thing. Back at the start of the season, Red Bull didn't seem to have enough confidence in their driver or their car to match Mercedes blow for blow strategically. They had enough margin on Sunday where they could just pit whenever Mercedes pit and still come out ahead. They had enough gap on track. They had enough pace in the car. And despite multiple pit stops and multiple attempts to try running him down at the end or trying to undercut him, trying to pincer him, everything Mercedes tried was easily countered.
I still can't believe Red Bull has twice as many wins as Mercedes this season. Already. I'm sorry.
It's weird in this day and age, especially with that win. Verstappen becomes the winningest driver in a single season that isn't in a Mercedes.
Yeah.
No matter what happens for the rest of this year, that's the most successful season by someone not in a Merc in the V6 turbo hybrid era.
God, yeah, because Vettel had 5, I think, in his best season at Ferrari in a non-Mercedes context. So, yeah, that's his 6th win of the year already, and we still have a bucket load of Grand Prix to go, assuming everything works out, even with COVID and whatnot. But no, like I said, they tried the undercut, it didn't work. And my favourite part of that race was when, in their second stints, it's like Red Bull almost saw the Hamilton second undercut attempt coming because they told Max, go like hell for 4 or 5 laps. And then in the middle of that 4 to 5 lap window, Hamilton comes in the pits and I'm like, yeah, Red Bull saw it coming. And yeah, Red Bull were just on point with Verstappen's car all weekend long. It never really looked like Verstappen was going to lose, at any real point in that race.
No, with the start he got, I keep going back to that opening lap, and I cannot believe the poise and confidence that Max showed to just hammer the car on ice-cold tires that hard, that early on to pull that gap. And it feels like Mercedes operationally isn't operating well right now because they can't just flip a switch and go decide to win a race.
No.
They've got someone who can counter them.
Yeah. And I want to go into that with the next point I wanted to ask as well. We'll segue into this one quite nicely because this was not a perfect weekend from Red Bull. If anything, they still came out of it the loser in terms of points scored because Sergio Perez had a bad qualifying session, followed by a pit lane stop, and then was only able to come back to 8th. Okay, not a bad day at the office by any stretch in the race, but 8th is still
He needs to learn how to qualify that car because he's plenty fast in the race. Race pace is not the problem. It never has been with Sergio Perez.
Oh, no.
But the fact that he's never been the most brilliant qualifier is only being made worse by needing to be in the fight. On another weekend, maybe the pincer movement works.
Yeah, because it would have played out completely differently if, say, Perez just made Q3. If he qualified 10th.
Or 5th.
If he just qualified 10th, he would have been easily able to finish 4th.
Yeah, because the time difference between the top 3 and then 4th place Pierre Gasly, which we'll get to.
They lapped everyone.
Yeah,
they lapped
everybody
the whole field
else.
except for the podium.
Yeah, they lapped everybody else on track, and I think Gasly, before the last Mercedes pit stops to go for fastest lap at the end of the race, it was something like 50 seconds. 2/3 of a lap. They were so much faster than everybody else. Almost a second a lap in the context of the field. Some of the bigger midfield hitters we associate did not have particularly great weekends. Again, we'll get to that briefly, but with errors on both sides, fellas, regarding Mercedes, maybe from a strategic standpoint, as well as Red Bull, maybe from a driving standpoint with Perez, which team do you have the more confidence in right now? Because neither team is firing at full cylinders at the moment, in my opinion.
Bull.
Yeah,
Red Bull.
It's in the ball's in Red Bull's court. A bad weekend for Red Bull still means second place for Max Verstappen. You can't counter that.
Well, that's the thing is that Max's only bad days this year have come as a result of outside factors, let's call them, outside the driver's seat. Even if he just finishes second in Silverstone, he still has a healthy points gap in the championship.
Yeah.
Instead of, being pitched into a quite large crash. Because Mercedes seems... What would be the right word? It's like they're not used to actually being in a championship fight.
They're flustered.
Yeah. They're flustered because they can't just decide to go win a race. They can't just decide, all right, turn the car up to max, go 8/10 clear of the field at will.
Yeah.
And it's not like 2017 or 2018 when no matter how bad Mercedes was strategically, Ferrari was always a hell of a lot worse.
No kidding.
I'm sorry, Dre.
No taken. I will take my L's with good grace on that one. It was a painful time to be a Ferrari and a Sebastian Vettel fan. Point is that it's hard not to disagree with that. Max has been, for me, the best driver in the sport this season. He's very, very rarely had a bad day, and even any mistakes he has made has largely been minor. Like in Bahrain, for example, it cost him, 7 points, but you're not losing too much sleep over a second place. Perez is not firing on full cylinders. He needs to be, in the context of this title race, because they did, no matter which way you slice it, they lost 6 points to Mercedes this weekend in the constructors, and that's the title that pays money. It was a bad weekend in that sense. I mean, second, third, and a fastest lap was enough for Mercedes to still, have an overall net positive on the weekend. But they can't keep hemorrhaging wins to Verstappen like this. Eventually that will catch up to them. The Mercs have always struggled from a strategic standpoint when they've had two cars in a fight. When they've had one car in a fight, it's not normally a problem, and when their cars have been a little bit stronger, Hamilton's been able to get him out of a pinch more often than not because he is that good. And no one's disputing that. But this time, when the cars are on a very close footing, maybe a 10-5 away, most weekends now, the operational run-ins of these teams matter that much more. And Mercs do not fill me with confidence when they've done this. France was a classic example of that. They were out here jumping up and down about how they won in Spain, and then they had their pants pulled down in France in identical fashion a couple of weeks later. I thought that was one of the most hilarious turning points of the whole season, because that was part of the
it was Red Bull
win streak.
Red Bull stopped being passive at France. They stopped being passive, and they started deciding, you know what? Let's just match Mercedes. Whatever they do, we're either going to match them. If they get ahead of us on track, we're going to go aggressive. And it's been working for them.
I
love that. I love that. That's the Red Bull I've been waiting to see after years and years of boasting, and it's finally coming good. Congratulations, you've done it.
Well, and I mean that it's gonna come into play quite a bit at the next track we're at, given it is the power circuit to end all power circuits.
Oh,
that lump of metal in the back is doing its job.
Yeah. Should we talk about the driver who it wouldn't surprise me at all if he doubled up at Monza?
Sure.
Oh, come on.
Bit of a reach, but, you got to give it the old college try. Pierre Gasly. P4. His third straight finish in the top 6.
Pierre Gasly. That's it. That's the section.
He's a monster. This is not a fluke anymore. He's like this.
He's putting the car top 6 every fucking weekend.
Yeah, I know it's easy. It's a little bit funny because we were gassing up Lando Norris about a couple of months ago about his amazing run of form, and it's still amazing. He's had a bit of outside interference. It's maybe taken an edge just a little bit.
McLaren were rough this weekend.
Indeed, the weakest but at the same time, under the radar, Pierre Gasly is almost single-handedly dragging AlphaTauri into the top 5 battle in the Constructors' Championship. Because Yuki Tsunoda's not really pulled his weight. He's only got 12 points so far this season.
18.
Pierre Gasly is only 9 off his career best, which was last year when I think he had 75 last year. And that was only a 17-race season. With a win.
That was scoring a win. He's almost matched it already, and we have over a third of the season to go.
I'm telling you, if something goes screwy with any one of the BD4 at Monza, Pierre Gasly's on the podium at minimum.
Pierre Gasly.
He's a driver of the year candidate.
I might rate him over Norris for driver of the year because I think the AlphaTauri is better than what it's shown. I think part of that has been Yuki being pretty rough this year.
All I want is for Yuki to do.
I just want him to be good, but he's not been good as of
It's a nice
late.
point.
Well,
but Gasly has been consistently putting the AlphaTauri in the fight with, up to this point, what was considered the battle for the best of the rest between McLaren and Ferrari.
They're only 6 points behind Alpine. They're like
Alpine's won a race this year.
They're a whole race ahead of Aston Martin, who were our preseason pick to be the best of the rest.
Aston Martin is stunk. Pierre Gasly is he's hunting down that 10 out of 10 in the M1 awards. He's trying.
Pierre Gasly wants it to be known that after this contract ends, we'll talk about it a bit. Net seat opens at an elite team. I want that. I want that. But we'll hold that thought till later.
It's amazing what happens when you join an employee that actually gives a shit about its drivers, gives them a happy atmosphere, and lets him drive the nuts off a decent machine.
Oh, but Pierre only knows how to just look at graphs and analyze data.
I'm going to disagree with both of those notions. What I'm going to say is that Pierre Gasly now is not the Pierre Gasly that drove at Red Bull.
Oh yeah,
he is. He's better.
He has evolved so much as a driver since then. His whole approach is different. He got put in the dumps. He got fired from a top team, and his career was looking probably on the way out of Formula One, unless he changed. And he did, and he is absolutely phenomenal behind the wheel of a racing car.
Pierre Gasly doesn't even have to worry about, we don't even have to worry about if Pierre Gasly's going to Alpine or not, because he has his sights set higher, I think. He has his sights set way above his home team.
Yeah, that was a ridiculously good P4, and he absolutely, because he was in a race of his own. Obviously, AlphaTauri has limitations, and they're not going to challenge the big three.
He drove away from everyone behind him.
Yeah,
he drove away.
The midfield got slaughtered behind it. The Ferraris and the Alpines were nowhere in comparison to Pierre Gasly in the Honda B team. Phenomenal performance. One of the best of the year so far. Seriously, that
says quite a bit about, again, that lump in the back, because last year, car wasn't bad, but it wasn't doing this on a regular basis.
No.
It was the clear bottom of that midfield tier last year. It was, behind everybody else in that second group. Now, he might single-handedly get it into the... Because Franz Toster's been begging for that top 5 finish for years in the Constructors, and this might be the year they finally get there.
So
it's going to be a hell of a job. But yeah, he's doing a brilliant job.
Yeah, all that... Did RJ just go quiet?
I want to hold my thought. I want to hold my full thoughts about Gasly and Tsunoda until our next segment. But
I was
go
going to say I just lost my fucking train of thought.
It'll come to you. We'll cut it a little bit
Move on. If it comes back to me, I'll pitch in.
Let's talk about fans. Let's talk about the best fans in the world. Registered trademark, Drake.
Did Lewis Hamilton enter the chat here? Best fans in the world, best fans. Thanks everybody for coming out, etc. Yeah. Same again next week. No. So, what did you guys make of the overall atmosphere at Zandvoort, the track as a whole, the vibes? We were all in orange, so it clearly made a mark somehow. But what did you guys make of it all from an overall spectacle?
I was right that it was going to be very hard to overtake. What I didn't expect was how fun it was to see the drivers take the high bank corners, Hugenholzbach turn 3, and last corner Leyendyke-Bach. And people saw the proposals, and they were very worried. Christ, you're going to put a 19-degree bank corner? God, this is going to be like a fucking like an IndyCar disaster crash. To their credit, there wasn't a lot of bad shit that happened there. You saw a couple guys spin off on the gravel and shit in qualifying, but overall it was pretty calm and
surprisingly well behaved.
Yeah, and the bank corners actually gave us different lines that you could tackle. Could you imagine if these cars could actually follow each other through corners and race wheel to wheel? It'd be even better.
I think we didn't see anything wild the bank corners because there's only turn 3 is the only corner where you could really be alongside someone going into it. You can't really Leyendyke-Bach. You can't really be alongside someone going into the corner because the corner before. I think the only thing I'm disappointed about is they originally envisioned the DRS zone on the main straight extending starting just before Leyendyke-Bach to really try to make Tarzan in turn 1 an actual overtaking opportunity, and they decided to play it safe because they didn't want any incidents after everything that's happened over the past couple weeks, which is understandable, but it probably there weren't turn 1 was not really an overtaking opportunity.
There's a lot of red flags in practice and qualifying.
6 in the weekend if you include the junior series.
I will say the track
3 this weekend.
Atmospherically, if you're a Max Verstappen fan, fantastic. Shout outs to that guy who bought the Lewis Hamilton banner, hung it from a plane and flew it over the track.
I got obliterated for pointing that out on Thursday from all the Hamilton fans. Well, it's not your money being spent, and I'm just I just thought it was a funny observation. He spent 1,600 quid on it.
This is not egregious meat peeping. Come on.
I mean, you're being berated by people who spend so much time on Twitter they can't feed their kids. Anyway. Feel free to cut that out or leave that in.
No, I'm leaving that in.
That's absolutely staying in. Oh, damn.
If it sounds like the shoe fits, it's because it does. No, but really, atmospherically, it was fun. Orange smoke everywhere.
Oh yeah,
drivers told him don't do this, and
yeah, Alonso on the cooldown lap is. So I'm taking it Verstappen won because I can't see.
Just imagine when this actually gets opened up to full capacity. Because if you looked at some of the crowd shots,
looked like full capacity.
Yeah, they did not cap this at no damn 50%.
as a disclaimer, they were only allowed 66% attendance. So I think there's room for another 30,000. Yeah, there's room for another 30,000 here. So, there is plenty of potential for even more. I don't believe them because it looked like it was a sellout, but it was.
It looked like it. It sounded like it when Verstappen got pole and it drowned out the sound of the cars. The track looks like a riot to drive, but much like one of my favorites in Suzuka Circuit, phenomenal to drive, doesn't produce the best racing in Formula One cars.
No.
I mean, leading up to it, I mean, the F3 cars. The F3 cars couldn't even really pass, which should have been a bad sign.
Yeah, Zandvoort is a place where sports cars, GT cars, have a tough time overtaking. You think it's going to be easy in a Formula One car?
No. No. I was going to say, look, this atmosphere-wise, it was like Mugello in MotoGP when you get 100,000 rabid Italians in a sea of yellow smoke devoted to their one and only true king, Dino Petrucci. No, sorry. The last Italian to win in Mugello, I'll have you know. But it was a tremendous atmosphere. You could hear the roar when Verstappen put it on pole. That's cool as shit. There's no denying that. I'm not going to sit here and say that I could endorse having flares at a Grand Prix circuit, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't add to the atmosphere, because it does.
I have a feeling that flares, much like the air horns and the peak gears, are going to go out the window at some point. Real quick. But these pops, all they were missing was like a banging hip-hop beat set to Flight of the Valkyries, and it would have sounded indistinguishable from any one of the number of Austin-esque pops from All Out this past week.
Because Max Verstappen, as we all know, is all elite. But the atmosphere was great, as Cam's alluded to. I agree with the sentiments. It looked like it was always going to be a challenge. It was. You had to be spectacularly in front to be able to pull a pass off anywhere on this place.
Which both Sergio Perez and Pierre Gasly putting in their entries into the Scotty Award, because damn.
Oof, yeah, some big balls driving there to make that work around the outside of turn one. Yeah, but hopefully next year, new cars, etc. Maybe we get a bit more raceability. Again, I think extending that DRS zone at the front certainly wouldn't hurt. Not a bad idea either. Speaking of the atmosphere,
and speaking of pro wrestling crowds,
oh boy, I got a feeling this might split the internet here. But I'm going to say it anyway. What do we make of the state of the booing? Because for context, real quick, we got the Dutch fans booing Lewis Hamilton after qualifying second on Saturday. Guido van der Garde was doing the driver interviews. He gave a thumbs down sign to the crowd, like we're watching Gladiator. Like, fans, no, don't do that.
It's fucking wild that Guido van der Garde is the voice of reason anywhere.
Guido van der Garde, known troll on the internet, is telling the fans not to boo Lewis Hamilton. That's a hell of a sentence in its own right. Thankfully, the fans wisened up a bit on Sunday. The booing wasn't really a thing for the race podium or the interviews. Then they wisened up. They didn't boo Hamilton on Sunday. In fairness, if I'm being completely balanced about this, but people on the social medias don't like it when these drivers get booed. But I wanted to hear what you guys thought of the thing, because we haven't really talked about it all that much, and I want you guys' perspective on it.
Plenty of those same people were probably booing back in 2013.
Yeah.
I'm split about it, because on one hand, a part of the hey, don't boo drivers things comes from a place of, we're fans of our sport are better than fans of other sports. This is not football.
Coming from NASCAR, growing up on NASCAR, booing drivers is a way of life.
It does come from a place of looking down on other sports. But obviously the other side of the coin, where it's like these drivers are risking their lives out there. This is dangerous. Yeah. There's a big gray area, but to say that booing is off limits all the time, I'd say that's too far.
I think it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic is what it is.
Yeah, if I wanna boo, say, Nikita Mazepin, no one would have any issues with that.
Right.
That's just it. The problem isn't the booing, it's who's getting booed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because back in 2013, when a certain blonde German kid was winning everything, and I do mean everything, he was getting booed at every track, regardless of where it was in the world, because, well, he made the tough, real racing driver Mark Webber sad.
And that's also another factor about it, where it's like, fans don't just boo people for no reason. Most of the time, in Lewis's case, there are other reasons why Lewis is getting booed. But most of the time, when drivers get booed... This recent
spate of booing, it started with a particular incident at a particular race.
Yeah.
Where someone ended up in a wall at 51G.
And most of the time, when drivers do get booed, it is somewhat encouraged by the media. Where media personalities don't specifically say, hey, start booing this driver. They'll say things like, what this driver did, or for whatever reason, this driver should be shamed, and you shouldn't be behaving this way. And
just look at the aftermath of, just look at the Hungary media pen session, when we got the rivalry hyped up. Do Max and Lewis hate each other now, etc., etc.? And Max literally told the media pen to shut the fuck up on international broadcast, because he was sick of hearing it. And Lewis was right there. Lewis was sick of hearing it.
Yeah. Again, a lot of this is going to stem from that and that incident. It riled up both fan bases. I'm British. I come from a soccer background. I'm not going to sit here and say that booing is completely off limits when I'm a fucking football fan. I can't do it. It's socially acceptable to boo football teams for no valid reason other than rivalries. We don't boo, I'm a United fan. I don't boo Liverpool because, for any genuine nasty reason. It's because they're Liverpool. We were told that that's a rivalry, so we boo them.
Say the line, Dre.
Which one? I've got plenty.
Sports rivalries are built on what?
Hatred. Cold-blooded hatred. They are not built on mutual acquaintances, friendship, and respect of the game. They are built on good, cold-blooded hatred.
Yeah, it's Falcon Saints.
Yep.
People don't boo, people don't boo athletes because they love them.
No. And I've always found that, to a degree, I understand why F1 fans think they're above that, because, as King alluded to, there is a genuine
F1
increased
thinks it's
risk
above everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, that in general, first and foremost. But second of all, yes, there is an element of, obviously, there is an increased element of danger in this sport compared to most sports. That's understandable. However, if you honestly expect sports fans who have paid their hard-earned money to go to an event in person and not be emotionally invested in the people involved, especially in this era where driver personalities count for more than ever before, I've got some snake oil to sell you.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to happen.
But the thing is, again, I'd say, a lot of media outlets do look at themselves, and it's like, you can't condemn booing while also doing things that encourage people to boo drivers.
Yeah, exactly. Very true.
You're trying to create a solution to a problem you are creating.
You're right. It's like, oh no, the bridge is on fire. Let me pour some kerosene on it and then call the fire brigade. It's like, go on, RJ.
My stance on booing is this. You boo drivers all you want. It's fine, but that should also open the door for the drivers to cut a full-scale heel promo on you. This is my stance, and I'm sticking with it.
Yes, I look forward to the 15th weekend in a row where Lewis Hamilton says, "Oh, don't worry, the booing motivates me," like every elite athlete says when they don't like them. You know, like, "Oh, the booing motivates me." Like,
no, Lewis, you're in Italy. Go for that cheap sports team heat. There's got to be a Serie A club you can trash on.
Just dunk on Juventus like everybody else does.
That's not how you get heat. No. Everyone hates Juventus already.
No,
okay,
Lewis already spent enough time dunking on Maurizio Arrivabene.
Very good. No, look, I've said it before. We didn't give a shit when Sebastian Vettel was booed for 2/3 of 2013 for the highly poisonous activity of, and let me just check my notes here,
winning too much.
Ignoring a team order and winning too much. It was nonsense then, and like, I don't condone booing people for no good reason. Like, that I think is objectively stupid. Yeah. Like, I will also say that the attitude that Motorsport thinks it's above this sort of thing, Dale Earnhardt got booed in his homegrown Prix, his home races in NASCAR, for dumping people out on track. We're not above this.
Famously, when he chose to rattle Terry Labonte's cage and win a race, the boos were raining down from a sold-out Bristol crowd. Yeah. While he was smirking up at them in victory lane.
Counter that point, Jeff Gordon had trash thrown at his car because he won at Talladega and his name wasn't Dale Jr.
Right.
He was catching Budweiser cans to the Pepsi car.
Yeah, so like I said it before. This whole notion that motorsport fans are above this is complete horseshit as far as I'm concerned. Oh, yeah. You know, so I would say embrace it. Embrace it. It's part of the fun.
Embrace it, but obviously call out the behavior that's actually damaging.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because
we've seen enough horrific behavior on social media to last a lifetime in the last 2 months of Formula One.
Yes.
That's the shit that you should condemn.
Oh, yeah.
Not the petty booing that doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, you're allowed to not like someone. Trust me. Don't worry about what Twitter tells you. It's not a hate crime. I promise. Right. So, with Zandvoort, solid 5 orange flares out of 10, I think. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we needed a nice, normal, mostly processional 5 out of 10 race to just reset our bearings after
take the edge off it.
After Hungary, after whatever the hell Belgium was. we just needed a nice palate cleanser.
No.
Yes, Belgium, the NA out of 10 race.
The "are you fucking kidding me" of a different variety out of 10. Yes, with that in mind, we'll be back to talk about Formula 1 on next week's show with the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. More on that at the end of the show. Without further ado, let's move on real quick. Silly season, ladies and gentlemen. RJ, get your yellow tie out of the Sky Sports News cabinet. Let's talk some transfers.
Bow! 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 It's time! Silly season's kicking off. Monday morning, after trying to sneak in a fastest lap of the race against the request of James Vowles, Valtteri Bottas officially confirmed at Alfa Romeo on a multi-year contract to replace the retiring world champion Kimi Räikkönen. And when that happens, everyone knows what's coming next. Tuesday morning, George Russell, Formula 3 and Formula 2 champion, Formula 1 podium finisher, Mercedes-Benz single-seater protege, confirmed at the Mercedes-AMG Formula 1 team for the full season alongside Lewis Hamilton, which is a great time for AlphaTauri to dump that they're re-signing Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. Just dump that news while everybody's losing their mind that George Russell is officially finally a Mercedes driver at long last. Late Tuesday night or very early Wednesday morning, depending on where you are, there's a photo that leaks out of a man of Southeast Asian descent in Williams gear doing a photo shoot.
Oh, yeah.
And we all know what that means. Wednesday, it's confirmed. Alexander Albon back full-time in Formula 1 next year with Williams. Nicholas Latifi is back too as his teammate. Fans of Horsey Albon rejoice. So now
We'll see.
all that leaves, because we know Lance Stroll is getting renewed in that second seat, right? At Aston Martin.
Yeah.
We just have the second seat
come on.
we have a second seat available at Alfa Romeo, Sauber Motorsport, Andretti Autosport, this ad here. And one other thing that we didn't mention about that Dutch Grand Prix is that Antonio Giovinazzi, who was last week assumed to be as good as out of that seat, all of a sudden, after he qualified seventh, he just made this a little more difficult.
Yeah,
right?
Supposedly he got the order of, you have 3 races to prove why we should keep you. And, well, qualifying 7th in an Alfa Romeo that has been hot trash this year is a good step to do it.
It's a monster lap from Antonio. Brilliant bit of driving.
Nick De Vries, now Guan Yu Zhou, Teo Porcher, the Sauber Jr., they're all floating around as potential candidates with De Vries as the favorite if they don't keep Giovinazzi. But let's jump to the big one, the one that dominated most of the headlines the last 3 days unless something else drops. Folks, how's George Russell going to get on his first season at Mercedes?
He will score points.
Yep. He'll score points. That's all I'm
Thanks for
going
watching,
to say.
everybody.
Being completely honest, I don't have any idea. Everyone on the internet has no idea how well George Russell's going to do this.
They think they have an
King's
idea.
pop it off.
He could do really, really well. He could do really, really bad. We don't know.
We don't know, because he's only ever driven a Williams, so we have
Well,
no idea.
Because he drove a Mercedes one time.
He didn't finish it, but he drove it.
Were it not for him, were it not for Mercedes having their token meltdown of the year entirely in his side of the pit garage, probably wins his first race.
Yeah. I think people think they know how this is going to go, but we don't, because I've heard it said that before this move was ever made that Lewis Hamilton's scared of the competition he's gonna face. And
There's a bigger problem here.
Yeah.
We are getting brand new, literally nothing but the power units carry over cars next year.
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
And while everyone can sit here and say, well, it's Mercedes, of course they'll get it right. A lot of the same people said, well, it's Ferrari and McLaren Mercedes. They'll get it right in 2009.
Or
in
in
2014,
Red Bull and Renault are definitely going to get this right.
Or you do what your Mercedes is doing this year. You have a championship level car. You cut development early, put everything into new regulations, and suddenly you're BMW Sauber, staring down the barrel of a financial gun.
Yeah.
Oh man, let me check how the economy's doing.
Oh shit.
People seem to have this idea that Lewis Hamilton
all speculation is moot, given the circumstances. However, purely as a driver, whatever Mercedes produces next year, however good his teammate is next year, I think Russell's going to be okay.
I think as long as he doesn't
he's going to thrive
team
just
into
fine.
Yeah, if he doesn't throw his team into disrepute for doing something horrendously terrible or something, or injure himself, George Russell's going to get on just fine his first year. It's house money. It's his first year. Yeah, if he ends up giving Lewis Hamilton a scare in some weeks, so what? Lewis Hamilton's at the suns of his career. I know he still wants to win, but it's not it just blows my mind. It's Lewis Hamilton can't handle the competition. He wants his layover Valtteri Bottas as a teammate for the next 20 years for all these easy victories. Even he knows he's not going to be in Formula 1 that long.
Yeah, people are going on, this is borderline people just straight up saying, it's
not 2007 for me.
all over again.
It's not 2007 all over again. And Hamilton does not have
reversed.
Hamilton does not have number one-itis like Alonso has. Trust me, I would know.
I'm not so sure in that regard. However, we don't know, because Mercedes could be what they were for 3 years when they had Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. They could be shit. They could be somewhere in the middle. We don't know.
If I had to put this segment up on YouTube as a highlight, the title would simply be "Don't Know," which is borderline clickbaity, but is exactly what
Can
we're
I do
saying.
the clickbait
Yeah, we
thumbnail
don't know.
expression too? Can I just...
Well, how about this?
Purely from what we've seen from him as a driver, he's going to be okay.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He won't, his driving ability is not going to get him fired. That's all. That's the only thing I can be certain of.
Look.
And I think his
can't-
driving ability, if it comes down to another close championship battle next year, probably isn't going to be what costs Mercedes a potential championship.
Oh, yeah. That's what they need him for.
Yeah, look, the grand picture is, look, the minimum really should be match Sergio Perez next year. Because if you do that, it puts less pressure on Hamilton against Verstappen again next year. If it's these two teams in the title fight again in 2022, which is likely.
No, I'm all here for the Ferrari-Aston title fight in 2022.
King, you bite your tongue.
Manifest it. Manifest it. Manifest it.
You bite your tongue.
No, let him finish. That's one of the
I've never seen Dre's eyes go wider than when King did that.
No, I was going to say, look, it's hard to get a read on this because George Russell's career is hard to benchmark so far. The Williams team has been largely down. It's a bit better this year, but it's still pretty down relative to the field.
Something else we didn't talk about during the Dutch Grand Prix, those phenomenal qualifying performances had to end because both Williams, quote, ate shit in qualifying. They have this thing where it's kind of sensitive to wind conditions, and if you clip a curb and it's windy, the floor shuts off, and then you crash.
Good thing Zandvoort has all those trees and buildings to shield you from the sea breeze.
I know, it's great.
Mercedes can't go back in time and not fumble the bag with Pascal Wehrlein. They can't keep Esteban Ocon from going to some blue team. So it makes sense that, on the third time they finally get this right with George. I'm glad.
I was going to say, look, I think if he's on where with what Perez is at the moment, and look, if the last 3 years have taught us anything, especially about the Red Bull second seat, it's goddamn hard to come up from a midfield team into a top-tier team and be great straight away, let alone be given the chance to even potentially be great down the road. Mercs is different. They lean on the side of being conservative with its driver choices. They give their dudes a bigger leash. I think George will be absolutely fine. I think people expected him to go in there and trounce Verstappen at a sort of Top Gear antiquated presenter that thinks everything has to be Senna versus Prost, and I don't think that's what this is going to be. I think people want it to be that because they like the drama of an in-house title fight.
I think picking Russell is less of a risk than giving Bottas another year, given how up and down Bottas has been this year.
Let's talk about it. What's going to be the more impactful move next year? Assuming everything is as is, Bottas or Albon?
Albon. And the interesting thing is I thought about this as soon as I saw it this morning. It's going to be really interesting seeing if Albon can lead a team. Because he's never been in that position before. It's going to be very new to him. This is a team that, by all accounts, is on the up. They are getting deeper Mercedes ties for next year as far as the mechanical setup of their car. Albon has the keys.
Mm-hmm. That's something he was never going to have at Red Bull. He did not have a normal first 2 seasons of Formula One, right? Because his first deal is kind of slapdash together. He gets not a whole slate of preseason testing. Then he's rushed up to the big team in the middle of the season. And then 2020 is a COVID year, and he's suffering, and he's not having a good time. He needed to hit the reset button. I'm a fan of giving people who don't make stupid, self-inflicted adversity. I'm giving those people second chances. And Alex Albon, I think, is going to do well. I think he's going to at least get the better of 2/3 of the qualifying battle, score the majority of the points of the team, and Williams is going to trend upwards.
That's got to be the expectation, given he's up against Nicholas Latifi. But I'm not the biggest supporter of Albon, given his body of work. But this is very different for him, and he has to make this work. Because he's going to be directing this future of this team from what is theoretically a number one driver standpoint. And I think Williams is in better position to grow and move forward as a team than Alfa Romeo is, because somehow, despite having deeper ties with Ferrari, getting their chief designer in the middle of a Ferrari title battle, which is still one of the most insane things I think I've ever seen a team in a title battle do, and getting money to survive and not worry about folding, Sauber have been awful.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to say Albon to Williams purely because, just look at the teams. Williams trending up, Alfa trending down. There is a serious chance that there's a very good chance now that Williams are going to end up finishing 8th in the Constructors here because they made 20 points of their previous 2 races before this one, and Alfa is probably going to end up 9th. And, there's more money for Williams that way.
I don't get what's going on at Alfa Romeo Sauber, because they have seemingly all the ingredients, and by all accounts, Kimi Räikkönen up until this year was still solid, if nothing else.
There's still flashes, but you could tell, with Räikkönen, that there were times, at Belgium in qualifying, there was a point where I was just like, yeah, this isn't fun for him anymore.
This isn't as fun as it once was. Every car since 2018 has been progressively worse.
Yeah.
Even despite the issues with the Ferrari PUs last year, they've just been poor.
Indeed. I personally think that, look, there's actually probably a bit more pressure on Albon to succeed at Williams, given they're trending in the right direction, probably more historic brand team. We expect Williams to be further up than where they've been for the last half decade. There's no real pressure on Bottas to succeed at Alfa. And that's probably the best thing for him, to be honest with you, because that's where he did well when he was at Williams in the first place. Nobody thought that Bottas out of nowhere was going to come out and smack Felipe Massa around in 2014. That's what made him so impressive and probably got him that Mercedes.
Nobody thought he was going to upstage Spanish Grand Prix dry weather winner Pastor Maldonado in his rookie year after doing a half season of FP1s.
Exactly. So
I want that Valtteri Bottas back. That's the Valtteri Bottas I could roll with. Not treading water with Valtteri Bottas.
And that, I think, is going to be the unfortunate issue with Valtteri's career. We'll see how Alfa Romeo goes. Is he came into Mercedes as a fairly quick, exceptional defensively, good overall driver who needed to shore up his tire management and a couple other things, and he would have been a title threat. And he just never did.
Indeed.
He's got to reset. He's got to find his old self.
And it's hoping it does. I think there's a chance he can do that at Alfa, but he probably needs a bit of help from a team that's in a bit of a mess at the moment, as it is. More on Alfa Romeo in just a little bit, but I wanted to talk real quick. We gushed over his 4th place and how his season's gone to date. Was Pierre Gasly overlooked in this silly season in the grand scheme of things?
You can make a case that he is. I know he likes being at AlphaTauri, but AlphaTauri.
I don't agree with that. I think he wants more. The problem is he didn't really have any. I mean, Mercedes wasn't going to call him up out of nowhere and just stiff-arm George Russell and sign Gasly to the seat. But Gasly is in the unenviable position of driving his heart out at a not great team, but there's nowhere for him to really go.
It would be so much easier if Ferrari or McLaren were as good as they once were, but they're not, and they don't have any vacancies.
Well, and I think Ferrari's set for drivers for the foreseeable future. McLaren, well, one of those seats is secure. Not so sure about the other one in the future. But then, given where he's putting the AlphaTauri, McLaren's probably a lateral move for Gasly right now.
Yeah. I was going to say, my personal opinion is that there's just nowhere for Gasly to go. Like, the midfield had their ducks lined up in a row pretty early on. Daniel Ricciardo joined the team this year on a 3-year deal. Lando Norris quickly matched that 3-year deal later on in the season. Ferrari weren't going to move anybody. Leclerc's in the middle of a 5-year contract. Sainz is on a 2-year deal, and he's been excellent so far this season. They're not going to move him on anytime soon. Alpine was one of the first dudes to tie down a driver this year of Esteban Ocon's 3-year extension, and nobody really thought Alonso was going to go anywhere. And again, Aston Martin, no one's thinking Lance Stroll's going anywhere, and Vettel signed a multiple-year contract. So, even if you could talk about Pierre, the only real move for him was the very, very top of the pile, and that was Mercedes. I know they're very smitten with Pierre on social media, but I didn't ever think that they were going to take him over what they already had in their own academy in George Russell, which is a shame because I think Gasly's an excellent driver, and I think he would actually be a bit more of a benchmarkable driver to have than Russell at this point in time. So if they said to me, "We're taking Gasly over Russell," I'd be like, "Yeah, I get it."
I'll tell you what, though, if you're Mercedes, when Lewis Hamilton decides to move on from his Formula One career, Gasly's still available. Empty the piggy bank. Get this man a seat.
Back up the Brinks truck. And then back up the whole fleet of Brinks truck. Dr. Marker, we know you don't want this dude anymore. How much you want to give us? How much for him?
Yeah, he could be the number one guy on the board in the next 2 years, especially after when Hamilton's contract expires in 2 years' time. Is he going to go on to his age 40 season, Hamilton? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But there could be a big hole in that Mercedes in a couple of years' time if he's willing to stick it out a bit longer. Just a thought. One more before we get out of here as well. There is probably only one seat left on next year's grid now. Probably just one. We haven't, as much not confirmed their lineup for next year, but we're pretty confident that
we all know. Unless Lance decides he's bored with racing, we know.
Doubt it. But so there's only one seat left.
That team probably dies.
If that happens, we've got one seat left for next year. As it's the second now for Romeo alongside Valtteri. Who do you pick? Do you keep Giovinazzi? Do you gamble on Nick de Vries over there in the reigning Formula E world champion? Do you take your main academy prospect, Theo Pourchaire? Or do you take someone else on the open market entirely? Gentlemen, you're Fred Vassar. You no longer have Ferrari influence in your second seat. What say you?
Oh, Lord. Honestly, I'd just sign Giovinazzi to a 1-year deal and see how things are next year.
I like that.
I think no matter who they sign, it's probably going to be on a short-term deal, and then they see what happens with Pourchaire, because everyone and their mother thinks he deserves an F1 drive already.
Too soon, in my opinion.
Fuck it. See if famous vlogger Nico Rosberg wants to come back and drive for a season.
Somehow I'm not convinced he'd do that. He's got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, entrepreneurship-wise, at the moment. I don't think driving an F1 car is in his best interest anymore.
Callum Ilott has a one-off IndyCar drive, so I kind of feel like he has a foot out the door, which is going to be a shame,
Darn shame.
Best driver from the class that didn't get to move up from F1 2020. Nick de Vries has the talent, but my big worry with a driver like de Vries is that, yes, it's a whole new regulation set anyway. It doesn't gamble, but Formula One teams, especially when you get a whole new regulations overhaul, even when it shouldn't matter, are timid. They want experience. They want...
Well, I think that's the reason why they brought in Bottas.
Yeah. And...
safe pair of hands.
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they just kept Giovinazzi, who... Let's not forget, we talked about how much Alfa Romeo has regressed within the last couple of years. Giovinazzi didn't get settled back at that team until after that car started turning into 11.
Yeah, didn't help.
So
the problem is that other than qualifying by almost every other metric, noted hobbyist and 17,000-year-old man Kimi Räikkönen is still outperforming him.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't help.
don't get me wrong, testament to Kimi's longevity and talent. But if he's the guy that Ferrari booted out of a seat to put in Charles Leclerc, and you're still not outperforming him at this stage, it might be worth it to take a punt on De Vries and just see how it plays out. I think Sauber is going to go all in on Porsche sooner or later, but it's too soon now. Way too soon at this point.
I'm thinking somebody that's not on this board. I know it's trendy to think that because he didn't win the title last year and that he's only going to get up there because of like a rumored $30 million sponsorship. Guan Yu Zhou is Formula One material, I'd say. And he's going to bring cash with him, which is a big bonus. If he wins the Formula 2 title especially, I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me, I like King's idea. It's straight out of the NFL. It's the 1 year prove it contract. And Gio, I'm not sure how much of a better yardstick Bottas will be compared to what Raikkonen is right now. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Like, why did everybody pass on Nick de Vries 2 years ago? Or 3 years ago, I should say. And that's what worries me about
Mercedes had nowhere to put him but the FE team.
Yeah. And the perception is that De Vries was an overcooked prospect who took too long to get out of Formula 2. A reminder that people think that they don't like the way Helmut Marko runs junior programs, but then all think like Helmut Marko does. Because they don't think that drivers develop at different phases.
And Mercedes has had this problem where they let prospects cook for a really, really long time, and until literally this week, throw them all in the trash for someone else to pick at.
People just assume, Mercedes is so much better than Red Bull because George Russell made it to the team.
They're the same.
The first one.
They're the same coin.
Yeah. Pretty much all of them. Like some are worse than others, but Mercedes are near the bottom of the pile.
The one driver academy where I would say they do a pretty damn good job is Ferrari, given how much time they give people. However, they have Mick Schumacher in a Haas right now, and I can't condone torture.
I like King's idea. I like Gio on the 1 year prove it deal.
I'd say the only point I'd make against myself would be the fact that when it comes to testing in F1, the only way that you get a young driver to test is not in current machinery, but in quote-unquote contemporary machinery. It needs to be a couple seasons old. And the fact that we're going to a complete new rule set next year means that if you wanted to bring someone in 2 years from now, it would be exceedingly difficult to get them prepared.
Yeah, it's the two sides of the coin. You might want a safe pair of hands going into the next set of regs, but if you bring someone in after, it's going to be a big culture shock.
Yeah,
indeed. One more year for Porsche, maybe.
Yeah, I'd still stick
at least one.
Théo Pourchaire is great, but they can also afford to take their time with him. This isn't a case
Yuki Tsunoda is walking, breathing proof that maybe you shouldn't bring your hyped-up prospect into F1 too soon.
It was a different scenario. And by the way, I'm so looking forward to Yuki Tsunoda's second half hot streak.
Yeah, that's also the point I'm surprised about with, Honda leaving, that they decided to retain Tsunoda on that, side of things.
Honda is leaving, however, they are still producing and developing the engines entirely at Honda for next year.
And I know this season hasn't been good, but I'm still sticking to my guns that Yuki Tsunoda is probably the best raw talent the Red Bulls brought up since they brought up Verstappen, and he can win multiple races if he realizes potential over the next half of this season.
If he stops going balls to the wall in Q1 when he has debatably like the fifth fastest car in the sport.
Yeah, and I'd also say because of the regulation change and how different the cars are likely to handle next year, and the fact that no one has experience with the way these cars handle, it's pretty much a blank slate. If you're good at driving, you're going to excel next year.
Yeah.
Here's hoping.
Here's opening. Right, okay. That'll just about do it for this episode. Next week, we got a busy one, folks. We have the Formula One Italian Grand Prix at Monza, and guess what, gang? It's a sprint qualifying weekend as well. Aren't you all so excited? Don't all rush in at once.
Robert Kubica is back, and
Robert
Kubica is back, and just his luck that he finally gets a race seat at Alfa Romeo as they're trending behind Williams.
Of course.
It's not even the most unfortunate thing that's happened in this last 30 days.
I know, it's terrible. Get well soon, Kimmy. Exactly. Get well soon, Kimmy. But yes, Kubica is back for that one. We have MotoGP this weekend at Aragon. Lovely track. One of my favourite races on the year. Can't wait for that one. Maybe one for Marc Marquez. He could potentially win this one. He does love Aragon. It is anti-clockwise.
It is left-hand anti-clockwise track. Marc Marquez, say no more, fam.
Mm-hmm. Could be one to keep an eye on. It could be a second win of the
Maybe
year.
if he keeps the red mist out.
And he's hoping. And hey, IndyCar's back this weekend as well as we go down next season closing stretch. We have Portland this weekend. First time we've been there in a couple of years due to the pandemic. But yes, Portland for IndyCar this weekend. So we've got a stacked weekend of motorsport on this one. We'll be talking about it all on next week's show. But until then, basically you can find us real quick. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101, facebook.com/motorsport101, Twitter at motorsport_101, our personal handles at Harrison101HD, at RJ O'Connell, at Ryan Eric King, at C Buckley917, at Motorsport101 Pod for our Instagram page. On our website, motorsport101.com, a bunch of written content from me over there on that one as well. And if you'd really like us to get back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our audio, 10 for the video versions, and live recordings as well. Until next time, I've been Dre Harrison, they've been RJ O'Connell, Ryan Eric King, and Cam Buckley. Until then, arrivederci.
Later, y'all!
Bye!
So what King's saying is give Antonio Giovinazzi the Cam Newton contract?
Oh.
Yes.
Does that make Teo Porcher the new Mac Jones?
Yes.